Hello and welcome back to the Simple Joy Show. Today we've got a really difficult subject on our hands and it's decluttering sentimental items. And this is probably the number one topic that's requested to me to talk about, and it's something that many of us really struggle with. The attachment to the items that we really hold dear in our lives can make the decluttering process really difficult and a bit of an emotional minefield. So don't worry, today we're going to explore some ways to navigate it much more gracefully. This is the Simple Joy Show, the podcast for people who are ready to declutter and simplify their homes and lives to create more space, time, energy and freedom. I am your host, Hayley Forster, mother, wife and declutter coach, and I'm going to be sharing with you simple bite-sized nuggets to help you on your journey to living a simpler life through the power of decluttering. So if you're ready to choose calm over chaos, then let's dive into today's show. Hi everyone, how are you all? I hope you are all good. It's been a few weeks since I've released a podcast episode, and that's because me and my family were on holiday through August. So we had a fantastic holiday to California. We went with, we've got my husband and two kids and my sister-in-law, her husband and two kids as well. And it's really lovely because the two sets of kids are exactly the same age, and they get on like an absolute house on fire. So it was just really lovely to spend about 2 weeks with them, exploring California, going to Disney, doing all of the tourist things and just having some real quality time together. And it was brilliant. Yeah, we really loved it. It was a bit of a holiday of a lifetime, and it was eventful. We had our first day. We landed up, well, I was sitting on the plane. We were about to take off and I was reading my phone, about to put it in aeroplane mode, just catching up on things. And a news thing popped up and it said, there's a hurricane heading towards California. And I was like, fantastic, that's brilliant. So the day that we landed, it was okay, it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit drafty, shall I say. But the day after, the first full day of our holiday, was a bit of a washout. It pretty much turned into a storm where we were staying in Los Angeles. So it wasn't too bad. We still managed to get out. We went to the Warner Brothers studios and done a tour around there, and they were really good with the situation. There was a lot of flooding, but it was fine, and that started to close mid-afternoon. So we went back to our hotel and just stayed in the hotel for the rest of the day while the storm was happening. And lo and behold, the same day in the afternoon, there was an earthquake alert as well. So it was a very eventful day when it comes to natural disasters, which is kind of standard for me apparently. Like when I travel long haul, I tend to encounter lots of natural disasters, but that's a story for another day. But we're back home, we're here, the kids are back at school. My eldest has started secondary school. My youngest, she's in year 5 now and just started walking to school by herself as well. So lots of big changes here in the Forster household, but we're getting back into the swing of it. We're getting back into our normal routine. So, on to today's topic. When I get people to join my Facebook group, there's a couple of questions they've got to answer. And one of the questions I ask is, which is the most pressing point for you right now in your decluttering journey? And when you look at the data that I get back from that, the number one biggest struggle by far that keeps coming up is struggling with decluttering sentimental items. And I totally get it. It is so hard to let go of things that you hold really dear to yourself and that have meaning to you. But I just want to say, front and centre at the beginning of this episode, when you're decluttering your sentimental items, the goal doesn't need to be to get rid of everything. It's perfectly fine to keep sentimental items, but the key is to find the balance between keeping the things that mean the most to you and actually getting rid of the clutter. What you might find is that when you have too many sentimental items, they tend to lose their specialness, and they can often get lost amongst each other. And they start to feel overwhelming, starts to make you feel stressed because you feel like you've got too many. And when you've got too many keepsakes, I often find that you can't really enjoy them very much because there's just too many for you to appreciate. But actually having fewer sentimental items and only keeping the things that are really, really important and meaningful to you, that can help you appreciate them more. It helps you value them more. You can perhaps highlight them in your home because you're only keeping the best of the best and keeping the most special items to you. And just remember, you are trying to make your home a living space for how you live today, and it's not supposed to be a big storage box for your past. And I find that's a really good mantra to remember when you're decluttering your sentimental items and may come across some difficult items. So, how can you make decluttering sentimental items easier? The first thing I would say is just get started. I think we're going to be so daunted by the thought of decluttering sentimental items, and by the responses I get in my inbox every single day, it is the number one problem that stops people taking action. So instead of worrying about it and thinking forward ahead to what you've got to do, just get started, just get in the moment, start building that decluttering muscle and just dive straight in. But what I would say is give yourself time, give yourself space if you are struggling. If it isn't working on a particular day, that's fine. Just leave it, just move on to something else and go back to decluttering those difficult items another day. Don't let your struggles with decluttering sentimental items completely derail you with your decluttering journey. Just put them to one side, move on to something easier. You've got to be in the right mindset when you're decluttering sentimental items because it can involve a lot of emotional work. And sometimes you're just not in that right headspace and you don't have the capacity to actually do it. So just move on to something else, cut yourself some slack, and just do something that is much less emotionally challenging for you. Another way to just give yourself some time and space when you're decluttering sentimental items is to do like a little trial decluttering. And I've mentioned this before in previous episodes, and it's about this maybe box. I don't usually like maybe boxes, but when it comes to sentimental items, it can really help because if you're wavering on something, you're not sure whether you're going to be able to give it away or not, just box it up, put it out of sight. Put a date in your calendar, an alert that pops up to remind you to go back to that box, have a look, open up that box, see how it makes you feel. If you haven't needed it, you haven't wanted it, or you've not even thought about the item that's in that box during that time period, so say whether it be 3-6 months, it's going to be much easier for you to then let that item go. It's a bit of a safety net because it really it can be quite upsetting when you may worry about potentially giving away a sentimental item and worrying that you may regret it. So it gives you the opportunity to really experiment with decluttering without worrying that you're going to regret moving that item on. Another thing I would get you to remember is that your memories and your special moments in life, they are not in the objects themselves. Yes, they might remind you of a memory or a special moment, but they're actually in your mind, they're in your heart, and you're always going to have those memories, whether you've got those items in your home or not. So just remind yourself of that fact, and that can really help you let go of some of the sentimental items you might be struggling with. And as I said at the top of the episode as well, it's okay to keep some sentimental items, but within reason. It's okay for you to keep the ones that are of value to you, that have meaning to you. And it's just about choosing the ones that are really special to you, choosing the ones that you want to highlight and enjoy even more. So a way of doing that is perhaps setting yourself some kind of limit to help you be a little bit more ruthless when it comes to getting rid of the sentimental items, because that then allows you to be much more intentional with the ones that you want to keep. So as an example, just give yourself, I don't know, like a big plastic box that you get those ones at the supermarkets for quite good value, and you say, right, this is the container that I'm going to use to store my sentimental items. and anything that fits in them, they can stay. But anything that then overflows out of that, I need to just question myself whether I do actually want to keep it, or am I willing to part with something within the box in order to allow that to fit. And just having that limited space is going to really help you to be more selective about what deserves that space in your home. So just figure out what that limit is for you and for your life and your home, and just stick to it while you're going through your sentimental items. For me, I've got one box for myself and one box for each of my children, and it's their memory boxes. My husband doesn't really have anything. He's not as sentimental as me and my children, but we do have certain things of his within my box as well. So just work out what works for you as a family and use that as your marker. But actually, as I mentioned in storage boxes here, an even better way than storing them away is to perhaps repurpose them. In that way, you can enjoy them and you can appreciate them. So you could display things as home decor. Do you know those like box frames? What I used to do, not so much now because we've redecorated, but I used to have like my daughter's first pictures in frames, or even just use the item. I had a baking dish from my mum that I used to have from when I was little, and we used to bake with that and cook together when I was little. And I didn't want to get rid of that. It had a lot of good memories for me from when I was a child. So I actually just use that in the kitchen now. I make use of it every day. We cook with it, we bake with it. I do baking with my children with that container now, and it's just become a part of my kitchen utensils. So that's now put to use. I appreciate it, and every time that I do use it, I get a flood of those lovely memories back, which is much better than it being stored in a cupboard somewhere collecting dust. I would say the only caveat to that is just make sure that you're being selective with the ones that you choose to display or repurpose. Make sure that the ones that you are using in that manner just aren't adding clutter to your home. You want those to be the most special items, the ones that you're actually going to use, or the ones that you're actually going to enjoy seeing in your home. Don't just shift that sentimental clutter that you can't make a decision on from a box onto your wall. Another thing that I found really useful when I was trying to get rid of sentimental items, because I had quite a lot. I was a child that really struggled to remember things. I don't have a great memory, and that's been the same since I was a little girl. So when we used to have nice days out and holidays and things like that, I would collect items. I would collect leaflets, I would collect stones and rocks and things like that. And then when my mum died when I was 13, obviously there was a hell of a lot more things for me to get sentimental about. There was all of her possessions and the things that I wanted to keep of hers for memories, because I was always so worried about losing those memories and losing the thought of what she looked like and what she smelled like and what she felt like, that I wanted to keep everything of hers. So I did have a lot of struggles around sentimental items at first. And one of the biggest things that helped me is taking photos. So if you've got sentimental items that you want to remember, but you don't necessarily want to keep those items, they might be too big, too bulky, they don't necessarily fit in with your home or your lifestyle, but you want to keep the memories that are associated with them, then let those items go, but take a photo of them. And actually, those photos are often enough for you to preserve the memories that are associated with them without having to keep the item itself. And that was a big help for me when I was trying to get rid of stuff. I've got a very select small amount of things from my mum now. I've got a cardigan, I've got a ring, I've got that dish that I mentioned before, I've got some photos, and I think I've got a teddy bear, and that is it. A lot of the other things I was able to part with, but I've still got photos of them, and if I choose to, I can go through those and get that flood of memories. But actually, I've never really looked back at those photos, but again, it was a safety net to allow me to part with those items, knowing that I've got something as a backup to refresh me if needs be. Then moving on to the last thing that I want to talk about today, and it's just to make sure that you ask yourself why you're saving each item. What's the purpose of you keeping it? Is it something that you love? Is it something that's got a lot of meaning to you? Or are you keeping it out of guilt or obligation? We've all got different reasons for holding on to sentimental items, so you just want to clearly ask yourself why you're saving it. And if you don't have a clear reason for why you want to keep that item, you probably don't need it, or you probably don't value it as much as you actually thought to begin with. So just be honest with yourself about why you're keeping it. If there's any negative emotions attached to it, such as guilt or obligation, or it's got a sad memory associated with it, then let it go. If you are worried about the guilt and obligation fears that come with decluttering, then you might want to listen to episode 6 where I go into that a little bit more detail. But essentially, if you're only keeping an item because you feel like you should keep it rather than you want to keep it, then just feel free to get rid of it. And to wrap up, just be ruthless while you're decluttering your sentimental items, but also just give yourself some space. Be gentle with yourself. It can be hard work, both emotionally and mentally. And yeah, you're going to be having some ups and downs as you go through these things. And some things are going to be hard to let go of, even when you know that you need to let them go. So just give yourself some space. It's okay if you're making slow progress with it. You're making progress. That's the most important thing. But just keep at it. Take breaks when you need to. And remind yourself that there's always going to be sentimental items that are exceptions to the rule. There's going to be things in your life you're never going to want to get rid of, and that add so much value to your lives, and that is fine. It might be something that's associated with a loss in your family, and it's still too fresh or raw for you to process right now or be objective about, and that is fine. Just do your best in the moment. Be as ruthless as possible, but be gentle with yourself throughout the process as well. Every bit of work that you put into decluttering your home, you know the end point. You know where it's going to take you. So show kindness, take small steps, and just know that you're going to reach your decluttering goals. I always like to remind people that decluttering sentimental items, it doesn't mean that you're erasing your memories. It doesn't mean that you're dishonouring your past. It just means that you're making more room, you're making more space in your life for the present and for the future. The essence of those memories are in you. They're not in those things. So just let go of the guilt, let go of that emotional weight, and try and make some room for a home and a life that's going to be filled with much more memories and exciting things to come. So thank you for tuning into this episode of The Simple Joy Show. I hope you found some value in today's episode. Do let me know how you are getting on with decluttering your sentimental items, if there's anything that you're struggling with or anything that you have found that has worked really well. But until next time, stay simple, stay joyful, and just remember, making space in your home often means making space in your heart as well. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support The Simple Joy Show further, then please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at HelloSimpleJoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.